Okay, so I have decided to make some videos. Well, one video, and I'm gonna probably have to splice it up to upload it, but I wanted to make a video about diabetes. Diabetes. What a fucking nightmare. Um, so, let's go back 15 years. Um, I was originally told I was pre-diabetic, and I was placed on metformin. It's safe to say during that time I did not know much about diabetes. I'd never paid attention. I was not informed. And the next 15 years have been quite a journey. Very informative. So, when I was first diagnosed as pre-diabetic and put on metformin, um, that eventually progressed. My sugars went up. I was told I was diabetic at that point. Um, that was within a year or two. During all of this time, I did have a point where I lost weight and my body seemed to regulate again. That lasted probably a year. And then I was back on medicine again after that. Metformin. Metformin's the answer for type 2 diabetes. Um, I disagree at this point, but I'll get to that. So, um, my sugars slowly went up. Go back down a little bit, go a little higher, go back down. I saw, the first doctor I saw was a DO. His response to me was, it's been a pretty consistent response from doctors across the board, which is, well, are you watching what you're eating? I have a big problem with this because, yes, I watched what I was eating and it didn't matter. Um, it could help, especially watching the sugars you put into your body, the carbs you put into your body. But overall, after years of schooling and going to a lot of other doctors, I'd been to other DOs, several MDs, endocrinologists. So what I learned in school, I have my Associates of Science degree, and I took a couple semesters of nursing school. Certainly not a professional in any means when it comes to the medical field, but I am very informed when it comes to the medical conditions that I'm dealing with. So, several years down the road, I start going to the doctor that I see now, and she had me on the max dose of metformin we could do. I was doing injections every day for medicine that was supposed to help block sugars. As time went on, it worked at first, but as time went on, it stopped working. And so I went into her office one day and I said, here's what I've learned in school, and here's my understanding of type 2 diabetes. If I'm wrong, correct me, but my understanding of type 2 diabetes is that your body is still producing insulin. On your cells, you have receptors where that insulin should connect. So when you're a type 2 diabetic, your body's making all of this insulin. Your pancreas is pumping out insulin that it can't use. Let's say insulin is shaped like this. Your body is making it in a shape that it can't be used. So it might be making it like this or like this, but it cannot connect to those receptors in the cells. So it doesn't matter how much insulin you make, your body can't use it. You're making broken insulin. So, at that point, I said to her, if that's the case and my body cannot make insulin, why has nobody to this point said, hey, let's do insulin. Let's give you insulin that's shaped correctly, that's made correctly. She agreed. She said, actually, that's a great idea. So we started with insulin. Awful experience. Awful experience. I hate needles anyway. It was awful to have to inject myself every day, several times a day. After a while, that stopped working. Then we upped the insulin. God, I don't even know in the beginning how many units I was doing with just the regular insulin and, long-term and short-term fast-acting insulin. Had a mix of stuff going on. Upped that, didn't help, wasn't working anymore. The next decision that was made was to put me on a 2 times potency insulin. And that worked for a while. And then it stopped working, just like everything else had. The metformin had stopped working. The injections to block sugars had stopped working. Regular insulin had stopped working. The 2 times insulin has now stopped working. So, feeling kind of frustrated at this point, my doctor decided to send me to an endocrinologist. I really, really wish... I wish my first doctor, 13 years before this 14 years before this had sent me to an endocrinologist. I went to the endocrinologist and he put me on the newest insulin that was out. It was 5 times potency. And started out low with that. Wasn't helping. It was sometimes doing nothing, and actually sometimes was causing the adverse effect, and my sugars were going up. So we upped it again and upped it again. At the end of this, I was basically taking what would be the equivalent of 1,000 units of insulin a day. And half the time it wasn't working, and the other half the time it was still raising my sugars quite drastically. Kind of discouraging. When I did see the endocrinologist, something he had said to me was, you honestly, from what you've described to me, because growing up I was extremely skinny, very high metabolism. I could eat and eat all day and never gain a pound. It wasn't until I was about 22, 23, so what, 17, 18 years ago, was not until then that I started putting on lots of weight, didn't know why. That's when they told me I was pre-diabetic. So this endocrinologist tells me, you, just from the onset of your symptoms and the way the change happened, looking at all of your physical conditions at this point, I'm 99% sure that you have what we call Cushing's syndrome or Cushing's disease. And I had never heard of this, so I went home and researched it. And it is basically an increase in cortisol in your body that your body... It has to do with the pituitary gland. Your body starts making more of that. And more than not, it's caused by a tumor in your pituitary gland. When I did see the endocrinologist last, he said that it looks like I've developed an immunity to insulin at this point. At no point at the beginning of this journey, in the middle of it, up to this point had anybody ever told me that it's possible to become immune to insulin, or that your body may, stop reacting to the medicines. The procedure for having a tumor on your pituitary gland is to remove it. It's to have brain surgery. The problem is, doctors refuse to do that a lot of times with high blood sugars, because you have a higher chance of dying during surgery. You have a much higher chance of getting secondary infections and dying, or having horrible complications after the fact. So the endocrinologist told me that we could not do the surgery until my sugars were lower. At this point, I've stopped taking anything because it's not working, and if it's doing anything, it's making the whole situation worse by raising my sugars. I don't know if you know what A1C is. That's your 3-month blood sugar level. And the last one that I had done was a 12.0. A normal person that's borderline considered pre-diabetic is 5.9 or 6.0. Usually most people are somewhere between, 4.9 and 5.8, 5.9. So basically what I've been told at this point is that I'm out of options. There's nothing I can do to lower my sugars. And I